All right, Don, am I good? You're fine. You're fine. Four total? No, maybe. That last one where they threw, they didn't end up calling a technical on that. They just called an intentional foul, where they threw, what's his name, to the ground. But yeah, that one in the first half was a double, and then 3 in Kentucky in the second. Yeah, it was great. And then the guy, do what? Oh yeah, yeah. It's crazy. That's one of the craziest games I've ever seen. About somebody can say it every week now. Yeah, yeah. That's somebody told me. Of course, I'm live now. Somebody said they never lost hope because they knew who was on the other bench over there and seen what he's done in the past, So, yeah, I always knew we had a chance, So, I doubt he's watching my lessons, probably. And I'm guessing Calipari's not watching my lessons, probably. I don't care if he is. All right. Get started this morning. Look at here, we got about the usual number here. People getting out and braving the elements. Appreciate you being here this morning. I hope you're glad you came after we talked about Zechariah. It's pretty interesting. I told Stan, Stan and I were talking just briefly about it, and I told him I was going to do both together. Since we missed last Sunday, I'm going to do Zechariah's got 2 chapters, and I'm going to do both of them together. And it's probably still barely going to take enough time because it's I don't understand a lot of it. Did as much research as I could, but I said it was the revelation of the Old Testament. Basically, it's almost like the Book of Revelation except for the Old Testament. Stan said kind of right up there with the last part of Daniel as well, and it is as well. But this is a lot of anybody you read or talk about Zechariah. There is a lot of symbolism in Zechariah. There's a whole lot of symbolism. It's visions and it's prophecies, and it's a lot of things that frankly are kind of hard to understand, or even if you understand them, applying them is a little different. So we'll start on lesson 9, page 79. That's what we would have done last Sunday. And then we'll get into the other. We're not going to get into the other one much at all. It's a short little section about the shepherds, and it's really just got one main point as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, we'll talk about that. Zechariah was a contemporary of Haggai, who we talked about. They prophesied at roughly the same time. They overlapped. Let's just say that they overlapped in their prophecies. Like I said, it is apocalyptic. There are a lot of symbolism in the book. I heard one thing I read said that, of course, we know that Haggai got them started rebuilding the temple. Got them started, hey, it's time, you've been concentrating on your own things long enough. It's time to build God's house now. And it's one author I read said Zechariah kind of had to come along and give them a little boost, that they had gotten a little stagnant in what they were doing. They did start the temple, and they were moving along, but they appeared to get maybe just a little bit stagnant in what they were doing. So Zechariah is going to come along and give them a little boost, but he's going to go further than that. He is going to have visions of several events that are going to happen in the future. And when you say visions, when you see in the title there, the visions, his visions are things that are to come for the most part. It are things that are going to happen. Okay, there are the things that are going to happen. There's 8 of them total. We're only going to talk about 3 today. I'm going to mention another one. I'm going to mention the first one. The book, our lesson here starts, as you can see, in verse 18. There is one vision before that, and I'm going to talk about that just a little bit as well. But so we're not going to talk about all of them. He talks about the restoration, that the Jews, has been restored. It talks about the coming of the Messiah. This is a prophecy that has a lot to do with Jesus, frankly, and how you interpret that might might vary a little bit, but there's a lot of messianic prophecies in this as well. This is the longest of the books of what's called the minor prophets. It is the longest of the book. There are, I forget how many chapters, but there's several chapters. So Zechariah actually prophesies more than any other of the minor prophets. So that's maybe why there are two lessons given to it here. But even at that, we're not going to cover all of them. But a lot of it's similar in nature, a lot of things that he's talking about. And there were many years. I don't remember exactly how many, but Zechariah prophesied for many years. His life, his life went on, and he was a prophet for a pretty long time. As he's having these visions, who is explaining the visions to him? Anybody notice? Anybody read? An angel. That's right, an angel. And I believe, Stan, different angels. I don't think it's always the same one. Right. I don't know if it's a different kind of angel. Right. I don't know. But it says angel Lord. And in one of the visions, it says one angel was coming and one angel was going. So it appears there's at least two angels that are doing these things. And they need explaining. It's a little different. It's things that you don't see every day. So these visions had to be explained. So that's good. The first vision, which is not, I'm going to read one at a time as we go here, but the first vision, I'm going to summarize it. Basically, the land is at rest. You are going to be left alone, you being the people rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem. You are going to be left alone. You are not going to be bothered by outside forces. Okay, that's kind of the first vision right there, and it rolls into the second one. It rolls into the second vision, but basically, you're going to be, you don't have to worry about being attacked. You don't have to worry about outside forces coming in. And when we move on to number 2, not only do you not have to worry about outside forces coming in, you're going to see here when we read the second vision, here's what the Lord is going to do to these peoples, to these countries, to these whatever kingdoms that have been harassing you, that have been hassling you. Here's what's going to happen, okay? Here's what's going to happen. So that's where we start here. Any questions or thoughts? Anybody have any preconceived ideas of Zechariah before we came in today? I did not before I started. Yeah, yes, yeah. Same as me, Stan. Go ahead.
And that seems odd because Ezra's in the Bible before Psalms and Zechariah's way over at the end. But Haggai and Zechariah are during the days of Ezra.
Zerubbabel, yep.
That came back and kind of started the spiritual revival, and God the people initially was involved in the rebuilding of the temple. Then Ezra's where we read that story about where they laid the foundation. They looked at it, and some of the people were shouting with joy, and some were crying.
That's right.
It wasn't anything like the old temple, and yet it was a step forward.
Yep.
And so there was good and bad going on. Well, then Nehemiah is about building the wall around Jerusalem, but that has not happened here
no.
yet with Zechariah. So we're in between. The people have come back. The 70 years in Babylonian captivity has come to an end. People have come back. They've been there for a while. They started building the temple, but then they quit because they got threatened. They even got a letter from the king.
Right.
But the prophets now, Haggai and Zechariah, are telling the people, hey, this has been long enough. You have done everything you need to do for yourselves. We need to get serious about doing what God has asked us to do. And so that kind of lays the setting for these two prophets. And in the book of Ezra, actually, in 2 places, Haggai and Zechariah are mentioned both together in the same sentence, talking about the fact that those 2 prophets are the ones that are encouraging the people, along with Ezra. You need to get to the work.
You need to get to work. That's right. And it's funny, you talk about Nehemiah and the walls. One of the visions we're going to talk about, it's going to say Jerusalem is going to have no walls, but it's going to be symbolic. It's going to be symbolically, New Jerusalem is not going to have any walls. We're going to get to that. But yes, that's like we talked about 2 weeks ago. The people had built their houses, they built all their stuff, but they had slacked on building the temple because they were intimidated. So they're getting moving now. And Zechariah even has to prod them on a little longer after Haggai as well. So, all right, first vision. Then I raised my eyes and looked, and there were 4 horns. And I said to the angel who talked with me, "What are those?" So he answered me, "Those are the horns that have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem." Then the Lord showed me 4 craftsmen, and I said, "What are they coming to do?" So he said, "These are the horns that scattered Judah, so that no one could lift his head up. But the craftsmen are coming to terrify them, to cast out the horns of the nations that lifted up their horn against the land of Judah to scatter it." So, little summary, I guess. This is what the horns, what do the horns symbolize? That's right, David, they're enemies. They symbolize power, they symbolize royalty, they symbolize kings, they symbolize these nations, like David said, that have come to scatter the people. Did they scatter the people? Yes, they did. They were successful. God allowed them to scatter the people. Now they've come back. Now they've come back. Okay, so that's who the horns were. Not sure. I read a little bit. Horns tend to symbolize these things. Why use horn? Why use a horn? Now, you all know obviously what kind of horns we're talking about here. But why use horns? Horns actually symbolize kings and power in this day and age. Okay, that's what I read anyway. Kings, power, and royalty. So we've got the horns that have scattered the people, and they have scattered the people. Now God is bringing in the craftsmen to do away with the horns, to deal with the horns. We talk a lot about God taking care of His people in this thing. God is going to allow this to happen. This isn't a time of peace. See what you think about this. This isn't a time of peace so they can rebuild the temple and so they can do all these things. It isn't just happenstance that this is a time of peace. It isn't just happenstance that there's no other power, kingdom, like David said, enemies. There's none of this to hamper them right now. To me, that's what this is saying, is that God has ordained this. God has allowed this. In other words, it's not just a random event that all of a sudden they have no enemies. This is something that God has sent the craftsmen to take care of the horns. Now, why craftsmen? Who would you think usually, and I ask why craftsmen, I'm just going to put a theory out there. Who would you usually think is going to come scatter your enemies? It's going to be soldiers. That's right. It's going to be an army. It's going to be an array, But God is saying basically, no, you're not going to have to fight your enemies anymore. What? I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to be responsible for them. Look on page 83. Well, you don't have to look. It's kind of hard to find. But on page 83, it is that second big paragraph right there. It's towards the bottom. It's almost at the bottom. This is just a idea somebody had, but I think it's pretty good. It may well be that the vision used craftsmen instead of soldiers to oppose those who persecuted Judah, to indicate that God's people would achieve victory through peaceful means as they obediently engaged in the work of a craftsman and rebuilt the temple. Okay? Anybody have any thoughts about that? It kind of makes sense. I don't know that we could absolutely prove that that's the case, but basically God sent craftsmen to take care of these enemies, not soldiers, not another country. He didn't arm the people and make them a powerful army like He did when they were coming out of the desert. This is going to be done by peaceful means, and it's going to be done by rebuilding the temple. Okay? Any thoughts on that? That's right. They don't.
That's what you said. But,
Yeah.
They were kind of comfortable with God protecting them.
Yeah. And Rick, we know in the past they had been worried about defending themselves. Stan mentioned the walls. What's one of the things that they wanted to do very quickly was rebuild the walls, to keep enemies from coming in. So God is kind of telling them that that's something that they don't have to worry about anymore. Okay, for a while anyway. They're going to be allowed to build the temple without outside issues. Okay. Any thoughts on that? Questions?
Well, the Medes and the Persians have conquered the Babylonians, but it wasn't like they did it to set the Jews free.
No.
They set the Jews free. Cyrus did because God had before ordained that he would come along and he would have Cyrus to let them go back.
Yeah.
And so it's in the time. There's not a war
No.
going on now. It's like, yeah, you've been in captivity for 70 years, and now in peace, we're going to let you go and let you go back. And not only that, yeah, they're going to get some letters. We've read about them, like in Lesser 2, that stop the building. But they're also, when they go back and find where the decree was made, remember the Medes and Persians,
Yep.
the law can't be changed.
That's right.
And they're going to find where those kings said, you go down there and y'all help them.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
let them- you get them wood that they need and all these things and send these things back. So it's going to be a time where instead of being threatened, there's going to be a time where they're going to be helped by
Yeah.
the nation in power.
And I like that point, Stan. Are they going to be helped by the nation in power because the nations are scared of these Jews? No. Why is it? Because God is working. That's right. Talked about, the Cyrus releasing the Jews and sending them back. I don't think it had much to do with Cyrus. God had said what? How many years earlier? It was going to happen. Yeah. And so it wasn't much he had a choice about. God had already said it was going to happen. Okay. So that's what's going to happen. So pretty neat right there. This next one is, I'll be honest, it's a little confusing to me. If anybody has any thoughts, I think I know what it means, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's read the vision of the measuring line. Then I raised my eyes and looked, and behold, a man with a measuring line in his hand. So I said, where are you going? And he said to me, to measure Jerusalem, to see what its width and what its length. I think that's all. To see about its. To see what its width and its length. And there was an angel who talked with me, going out, and another angel was coming out to meet him. So we got two angels here, who said to him, run, speak to this young man, saying, Jerusalem shall be inhabited as towns without walls, because of the multitude of men and livestock in it. For I, says the Lord, will be a wall of fire around her, and I will be the glory in her midst. All right, so here's this guy. He's coming to measure Jerusalem to see what its length and width is in order to do what? Build walls. Yeah, build walls. That's right. In order to build walls, to enclose it. And God is going to say that the New Jerusalem basically is going to be he didn't say without walls. He says as a town without walls. Okay, it's going to be as a town without walls. All right. What do we know about Jerusalem? Is Jerusalem ever used symbolically? All the time. Okay. Jerusalem is used symbolically all the time. When we talk about the New Jerusalem, we read in the New Testament about the New Jerusalem. So what is this Jerusalem without walls? We know they're going to build walls for protection, but what is this Jerusalem without walls? Who's going to be welcome? Everybody. Okay. Everybody's going to be welcome. This Jerusalem that's being talked about here, I believe anyway, there is some symbolism here talking about the coming age of where not just the Jews will be God's chosen people, but where everybody will have access. All right? A town without walls, a multitude of men and livestock in it. God says, I will be a wall of fire around her, and I will be the glory in her midst. No walls are needed. Okay? Well, if you don't want to say anything, don't. But what do you think about that? I really believe there is some symbolism there talking about the future, what's going to happen when Jesus comes. And we're going to see a lot of that in this book. If you read the book, you're going to see a lot about things that are to come. What do you think about these walls and being measured? This is hard stuff, okay? This is not easy stuff to understand. But I think it is some futuristic prophecy. Anybody?
Well, in today's world, if we're gonna start a construction project, what's the first thing we gotta do? Well, you gotta get a survey.
Yeah.
Where are the lines?
Yeah. How far can we go?
How much dirt's gotta be moved from here over to there and get it all, planned out and set up so that building can take place? So it's kind of like the normal thing is at the beginning, but then it moves to the kind of the point where, well, really and truly, that's not gonna be needed.
Mhm.
Because God is fixing to head up the spearhead, the reconstruction of it. And
Yep.
He's gonna aid in the building of it, and obviously symbolically, it's like eventually the New Jerusalem, if it represents God's people, there's not gonna need to be any defined border of it. It goes everywhere.
Yep.
God's people are gonna be all
Everywhere.
over the place, and they're not gonna have to come to one specific city in order to find the place where God is.
That's right. That's right. Not going to have to go to the temple. Not going to have to. Yeah, that's right. If you read the book of Zechariah as just a history book and just facts, I don't think you're going to get much out of it, because there is a lot of predictions for the future. There's a lot of symbolism of the way things are going to be. And I think, like I said, like Stan said, I think this is one of them. The new Jerusalem is not going to be a one city with a wall around it. It's going to be everywhere, And that's, I'll be honest. Sometimes it's frustrating, and I don't understand, and that's on me not understanding. I don't understand why God has to or did choose to speak in this kind of language, this prophetic language. It could possibly be laid out clearer. But I do get it. I do think I understand what's happening here, and we're going to see more of that when we get to the lesson 10 about the shepherds here in a minute as well. Okay, so New Jerusalem, no walls. Okay, God's going to protect it, and it's going to be for everybody. Now, this next one's easy. Thank goodness, this next one is easy, and it's the best one, and it's the one that we can really take a lot of joy in. The last vision we're talking about here. Then he showed me Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to oppose him. And the Lord said to Satan, "The Lord rebuke you, Satan. The Lord who has chosen Jerusalem rebuke you. It is not a brand plucked from the fire." Now Joshua was clothed with filthy garments and was standing before the angel. Then he answered and spoke to those who stood before him, saying, "Take away the filthy garments from him." And to him he said, "See, I have removed your iniquity from you, and I will clothe you with rich robes." And I said, Let them put a clean turban on his head. So they put a clean turban on his head, and they put the clothes on him, and the angel of the Lord stood by. All right, this is very symbolic. Obviously, this is a vision, but folks, it doesn't take much to understand this. You've got Joshua representing the high priest and the people standing before judgment, basically. And who's standing beside him? Satan. All right. What does that remind you of? Couple of things, anything. There's more than one answer here. What does that remind you of?
One of them is the scene in the book of Job when God meets with
Yeah.
some of the angels and Satan comes along.
Yep. Yeah. Jody, I believe you were getting ready to say, or said judgment maybe. With somebody. Job. Okay, Job. Well, I think judgment. I think we can definitely, this reminds me of judgment. It reminds me, like Stan said, of that incident. It also reminds me of what would we look at this in our day and age today. You got a person here who is guilty, And you got a person here who is trying to, it's a court case, okay? It's a hearing, okay? It is a hearing, and you've got a judge, all right? And the person representing Joshua, I believe it could be representing us, is wearing filthy garments. What are the filthy garments? Sin, okay? Sin is the filthy garments, all right? Now, Satan is standing there beside Joshua, obviously saying what? Look, he's guilty. Look, he's guilty. Look at what he's wearing. Look at how dirty he is. He's guilty. And the judge is going to say what? It doesn't matter, okay? Why doesn't it matter? Because the sacrifice has been made, okay? The price has been paid. Take off the filthy garments and put on the clean garments, all right? Why? Why take off the filthy garments and put on the clean garments? Is it because the person here, Joshua, or let's just say us, let's just get it down to personal level here and say us, is it because the person in the filthy garments really is innocent and they deserve to be clean? No, no. It's because of the sacrifice that was made, the price that was paid, all right? Joshua in the filthy clothes is given clean clothes, clean turban, and it doesn't matter what Satan says. What would you think? What do you think Satan would say here? If you're the defender here, if you're too bad Lucas isn't here with us today. We could use Lucas as a thing. What would you say if what do you think Satan's saying? But what?
He did it.
Look at all the things he's done. Look at his life. Look at these things. I've got something back here. Let's just put it on us because this is what it's about. It's about us. Look what happened in 1974. I saw him do this. Okay? I saw him do this. And but it doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter. Satan standing before the judge, Satan standing before the angels, Satan standing before God, doesn't matter what arguments he uses. Doesn't matter what arguments he throws out. If we are children of God, if we are redeemed by the blood of Jesus, then we are given the clean clothes. Okay? That's right. That's right. That's right. God says you're clean, you're clean. So that's an awesome vision right there. To me, that one is, there's no argument in that. there's no discussion. The other ones, there's a little gray area. There's no gray area here. Okay? There's no gray area here. All right? Thoughts on that? That's a good thing to think about, isn't it? That's a good thing to look at. That way back 600 years roughly before Jesus, in that time period, 600 years before Jesus comes, God's already got a plan for making us clean. And he had it way before then too. But anyway, he's already got a plan for making us clean way before all this happens. Okay? There are other visions. There are some other things you could spend a little time on. Those are the ones the author has chosen to spend some time on. Real quickly at the applications, the first one talks about God's sovereignty over those that oppose his people. I think, once again, I bring this up from time to time about God does have sovereignty over his people. God has sovereignty over those that abuse his people, that hurt his people. So a question we have as humans is, if God has that sovereignty over people who persecute us, why does he let it happen? Why does he let it persecute, And I don't have an exact answer to that, but I do know that God has a plan and he will overcome in the end. All right? I want you to think about something for a second. What about, we talk about God's plan, and God brought the people back from captivity, and he brought a remnant back, okay? What about those that didn't get to come back? What about those that were taken into captivity and died in captivity and never got to come back? Where's their justice? Okay? Where's their justice? Put it in our lives today, all right? What about somebody who has to suffer most of their life or a lot of their life, or has to suffer things in this life? And we struggle saying God is in control when so many bad things happen. Well, a couple of things. Number one, we're told this life's not going to be easy. We're told that bad things are going to happen. We're told that it's going to be everything's not going to be great. So it's not like we're promised that. But also, I still think we put way too much emphasis on earthly things, all right? We think God's plan for us is always going to be fulfilled during our 60, 70, 80, however many years, sometimes much less than that for some people. We think God's plan for us is to come into fruition during our lifetime. And please argue with me if you want to on this, because this is just my opinion. I'll draw the line here between something you just read and spelled out in my opinion. God's plan for us isn't always fulfilled during our lifetime. God's plan for us is eternal. It's not earthly, it's eternal. Okay? So you might say, God has allowed my enemies to overrun me my whole life. Okay? I hate that, and maybe it's true. But I don't think God's plan is an earthly plan. I think God's plan is an eternal plan. And I think we struggle to remember that sometimes, and I think it's hard to remember it because when you're going through hard times, it's a hard thing to think about. Okay? Now, I'm serious about this. I'm not just saying this. I want you to tell me what you think about that. I want you to, if you disagree, you may very well be right because that's just my opinion. So, anybody got any thoughts on that? Nothing. That's right.
Sometimes I think about when I was a little kid and I really hurt myself. At that time, it was all.
Mm-hmm.
I try to think back, it's nothing.
No, don't even remember. Probably don't remember it much now. Yeah, yeah. 100 years is nothing to God. That's for sure. That's for sure. 1,000 years, probably nothing to God. Not just 100 years, probably 1,000 years. So, I think if we ask God, why are you letting this happen, or why is this happening to me? I think God thinks more eternally and more spiritually, and we are humans and we tend to think earthly. Thank you for that, David. Anybody else? All right. Second, so God has sovereignty over the people who are bad people, who are evil. Okay, God's still over them. Evil does not go unchecked. Okay, evil does not go unchecked. It might not be checked in the time period you want it checked, but it does not go unchecked. The second application is talking about the vision that the last one we did there, and it pretty much it's kind of easy to understand. It kind of makes sense. So, anything else before we move real quickly, and you can see how much time we have. That's how much time I'm going to spend on the next one because I just don't have a lot to say about that. Any other thoughts? Look real quick at Zechariah and the shepherds. This is another very symbolic thing, and basically I'm going to kind of summarize it for you a little bit. I don't know whether I want to read it all or not. Basically, it's talking about how, and this is weird. Read it. You read on your own thing. It's talking a lot about how God's people are going to reject Jesus. How God's people are going to reject the Messiah. Okay, that's a lot about what this is talking about here. That's what most scholars believe it's talking about here. Some Jewish scholars don't necessarily think so, and I've tried to read a lot of things on it. But it's talking about breaking staffs, and it's talking about breaking covenants. It's talking about breaking relationships, and it's talking about when the Messiah comes, he's going to be rejected. What is used in here that is look at verse 12 and 13 a little bit. We talk about 30 pieces of silver. Okay, we talk about things being traded off for 30 pieces of silver. That's not by chance. We're not talking about 30 pieces of silver here in Zechariah simply by chance. Now, we do know 30 pieces of silver had a meaning back then. It wasn't just a random number. 30 pieces of silver was a slave's wage, so to speak. So there was that. But we also know it's what Jesus was betrayed for. And it talks about the 30 pieces of silver. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. Then I cut into my other staff bonds that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. Okay? There's, once again, very symbolic, very kind of apocalyptic kind of language here. But if you read it and you really study it, and I studied it some, and I really do believe what I read from people who interpret it is talking about how the Jews, not all of them obviously, but the Jewish nation is going to reject the Messiah. Okay, and we know that happened. We actually saw it happen. Okay. Any thoughts on that? Had a summary statement here. Remember, God has a plan. When you're in your time of need, God has a plan, and you might not know that plan until you get to heaven. You may not know, or you may not see that plan until you get to heaven. But I'm glad, I like what Stan talked about earlier right there, you know, knowing where we are here in the scheme of things. And we talked about that 2 weeks ago, you know, the remnant coming back and rebuilding the temple and everything. And that's where we are. And when we get done with the minor prophets, basically what's the next thing that is recorded is Jesus, you know, the gospel, okay, Jesus coming. So the minor prophets are going to speak in a lot of symbolic language, some more than others, but the minor prophets are going to speak in a very symbolic language, and they're going to talk about some things to come. But then what are we going to have after the last minor prophet? How many, is it about 400 years? Is that about right? We're going to have about 400 years of, we're not going to hear anything, okay, until Jesus comes, okay? So they're telling people, here's what's going to happen, here's what's coming, and then we're going to have, once again, 400 years. 400 years for us is a long time. What are we getting ready to celebrate here in a couple of months? Our country's what, 250th anniversary. Seems like a long time, all right? Look at how people lived back in 1776 or 1781 or any of those dates you want to look at. Look at how people lived then. Look at where they used the bathroom. Where they used the bathroom at? Outside, okay? Think about this morning, all right? Think about last night. Is that what you want to do? Think about how much things have changed in 250 years. Think how much things changed in 400 years from the last time we hear of the prophets until Jesus comes, okay? Long time for us, maybe not as long a time for God. All right, anything else? Like Stan said earlier, another thing Stan said, I hope you, I did not know as much as probably I should about the minor prophets. I hope you are at least getting a little bit of information maybe about a part of the Bible that you weren't super familiar with as we go through these minor prophets. I know it's not, I try to make it like today, like when we talked about some of the visions, try to make it as relevant as possible for sure. So, all right.